Hello and welcome everybody to another Thursday night edition of Aquaholics Anonymous. Of course, Chattanooga Ed, my buddy, pal, and co-host. I appreciate you being here. And we have a very special guest for you all this week. It is Amber from Big City Bettas, and she is going to talk to us all about bettas. Care, breeding. She knows all the wonderful things and so much more. So
I know a lot of them, but I think one of the cool things about bettas is there's always something new to learn. So
absolutely, and that's.
And also, did I mute everything right when I
think so.
Up?
You sound good.
Sounds good to me, and I appreciate y'all bearing with us. So, Ed, I know you had a couple questions lined up. Go right ahead, my friend.
Before we get really into the dirty, greasy part of, I don't know if that's probably a very good term for talking about bettas. How did you get into them? Why did you pick bettas over guppies or cory cats or angelfish?
I actually got into them because growing up, we always had a fish tank, or my parents got me a fish tank because I really wanted one. And we had a lot of different fish. It was kind of like the Petco, PetSmart hodgepodge. I think we had 2 comet goldfish and 2 common plecos. It was a 20 gallon. There was a couple of barbs of different kinds, like 2 of each kind because you wanted all the colors, and a couple of really big cory cats. And I always thought it was really cool, but my sister had a betta that she kept in a little tiny bowl on the headboard of her bed. And I used to go in and play with it, and I'd feed it, and just, I don't know, something about, he was in the tiny, tiny little bowl, but he was so much cooler than all the fish in my tank. And there's an older gentleman who ran my LFS at the time, and I'd always go in there and hang out. And I remember someone talking about breeding guppies. And it's like, wait, you can breed your fish? And it just kind of opened this whole door. And it was actually a 2-year learning curve before I had a spawn actually live and, not die because I was 7 and I was just trying to learn from guppy breeders. Sure. But yeah, after that, it was just, I don't know, it's magical. I think it's magical, the whole process. So,
well, was it guppies or was it bettas?
It was bettas, but I was trying to learn how to breed bettas from people who didn't breed bettas because nobody in the area bred them, at least nobody who hung out at the fish store. So wow. A little bit of knowledge they knew on what they were breeding combined with what they'd heard about breeding them in one book that I found at the local library. Like you said, it was awesome. A learning curve.
I bet. What? How many did you breed? Did you have to have a bajillion little tanks right away, or?
Well, it's kind of funny because my bedroom at the time, my parents didn't know I bred fish for years. My mom kind of knew, but she didn't pay attention to it because I had a really big closet and it had these sliding doors. And I literally put my bookcase in the closet and put Christmas tree lights. I'll never forget that because I snitched them from downstairs in a big box. And I set it up and I started collecting mason jars and peanut butter jars and pasta sauce jars. And I remember at one point, and this is so wrong because they were very small, but I was also a young child, Welch's jam jars. And they had endangered species on them. It was a collectible set, and they were my favorites because they had cool animals on them. Yeah, I started with that, and oh god,
that's crazy.
That's
awesome.
It was. I mean, I was very motivated. That's for sure.
Well, what were you feeding them?
What
did you feed these little guys?
Well, originally I started feeding them paramecium because it's what the guys at the fish store said. You put lettuce in a jar in sunlight and eventually you get little slimy bits and fog. And that didn't work very well. And then after that, I started collecting different things that I found outdoors. And I think that's honestly part of the learning curve because I didn't discover vinegar eels for about a year of breeding them, and you kind of need a really good first food to get them going, because they're a species that predominantly will only eat things live, moving in the water column. So I think that was probably my biggest failure, was not having food source or knowing what to feed them, really. But my parents, I'm fortunate in the sense that my parents' house had like a stream behind it, and we had a frog pond, and I would literally just like catch things in the water and just sometimes bring home peanut butter jars of water and dump it in, because that's what the guys at the fish store told me to do. Mind you, this was the late 90s, so
That's awesome, though.
I'm also not paying attention to the chat at all, and I'm so sorry for that.
Oh, you're fine. I've got it pulled up. But that really is one of the big advancements, in fish keeping. Well, it's a blessing and a curse. Like you mentioned, back in the day, if you will, if you wanted to learn something about a fish, it was either try and find people at the local fish store that knew about it and see if they were willing to share that information, or go to the library. And now we have things like, we can have you on here to discuss things, and it's open and available to, however many people come across this, go to your channel, and the wonderful parts of the internet. But there's also, I guess, the downside of misinformation is the bad thing. Not that there wasn't misinformation before, but it's much more easily spread. So.
Yeah, and there's a lot of misinformation, especially concerning bettas. Even just how to say it. Like most people will argue. I've seen so many arguments. Is it beta or betta? I'm honestly the kind of person who doesn't care, because at the end of the day, you know what kind of fish they're talking about, and it's so predominant. There's no reason to kind of nitpick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And frankly, none of it's right. It's actually Betta, like different enunciations on different parts of the word. So
yeah.
None of us are right. We all know.
Absolutely. That's the funny part, because I learned that from you. So I always chuckle when I hear people fussing back and forth about it. I'm like, well, technically neither one, but it is.
I don't remember what I say anymore, because I tried to say it the new way for such a long time, and now I just don't know what I'm saying.
I mean,
it just kind of comes out.
I go back and forth. I've actually had some people, like at a job I had recently, my manager kept saying, which one is it? Because you go back and forth. I'm like, it's whatever. It's whatever you want it to be. Siamese fighting fish. It doesn't matter. People know what you're talking about.
Well, what's really fun is now when it comes to like test versions of software that come out, it throws me off there. I'm like, wait, is this the beta version? The beta version? What? Hold on. So it's gone into that part of screwing me up there. But anyway. I guess one of my questions would be, do you keep a lot of different fish, a lot of different betas, either or? Do you prefer?
In the past, I actually had a very large breeding collection of wilds. Like, I will say, it almost became a fixation at one point, trying to like almost collect them all to see if I could breed them all, kind of thing.
Right.
Which it's part of the hobby, and appeal in breeding to some people is for some people getting bat points, and for others just seeing how far they can go with their breeding. So that's Absolutely. One thing I wanted to touch on, because I do think that's something very cool about the hobby, and also very cool about bettas, because they are a very like collectible fish, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Like, I know you have quite a few.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm curious, do you prefer the wild types, or do you prefer, I don't want to say they're more generic, but do you prefer like what you might find at a pet store? Yeah, domestic. What's your preference? What are you more into?
It's kind of a twofold answer. Breeding, I think I prefer domestics. Just because, breeding, I actually prefer wilds, because it feels like this accomplishment when you end up with eggs and then fry. And, if it's a species that not a lot of people have worked with, it can be really cool to kind of play citizen scientist and take notes and see what you see, and, potentially learn something completely new in that niche. But when it comes to growing out the fry and actually keeping them, I think it would have to be domestics. Just because as they're growing up, I mean, let me see my camera for a second. I don't know if it comes up on the camera behind me, but I don't want to move this too much. See what we can do. We can kind of make this work. So this tank right here, can you see some of the fish in it? Moving around.
Okay.
There we go.
Into the glare. But...
Oh, yeah.
So those are 3 weeks old.
Oh,
In
wow.
this tank, you can barely see any fish at all. Like up here in the duck or the frog bit, there's a couple. It has the same amount of fry in the tank, but this is 2 weeks, and that's 3.
Wow, they grow quite a bit.
Let me move this a little closer so we can try and. 1 second, guys. This, not unplug everything. Sorry. Yes. All right. There we go. A little bit closer. Is that a good angle? I can't see my.
No, we no longer have camera feed from you.
Well, shoot.
Real quick, while you were getting that reconnected, I'm going to grab some of these super chats and say some thank yous. Mary Paige Flynn, welcome back to the team, becoming a member once again. I do very much appreciate that. There we go. Thank you, Ed. I was just looking for that button. Thank you, Mary Paige, and welcome back to the Fish Room Fever family. Got Fish Tank Bar and Mike. We were going to be hanging out with him this Saturday doing our next episode of the Saltwater series. With $5 super chat says, hey guys, hi Amber and all. Thank you very much, Mike. Always appreciated, never expected. Thank you for that super chat, my friend. And looking forward to this week's Saltwater Saturdays episode. We got our friend Mary Paige Flynn with a $3 super chat that says, thank you, Amber, for being here. Missed you. Thank you, Mary Paige. We're glad to have Amber here. Been looking forward to doing this. Our buddy Furloughs Aquatics, let me move some of this so I can read. Furloughs Aquatics with $5 super chat says, Aquashella crew 1 week countdown. Appreciate it. Looking forward to Aquashella. And I don't, nope. The kids have gotten my little noise maker thing. That's why I haven't been hitting the button, because it's not right here. So no fake applause or no electronic applause this week. But yeah, Eric, I'm really looking forward to Aquashella next week. Ed and I were talking about that right before the stream started. That is going to be fun. And thank you, buddy, for the $5 super chat. Have to buy you some ice cream or a piece of cake or something. And we
That'd be awesome.
Whipswirl with $1 super sticker with that big brown pile of fertilizer. Thank you very much, Whipswirl. Hope you're doing well. Always good to see you. And Kenny from Aquatic Marine throw a $20 super sticker down with the Samurai Fox waving the #1 flag. Thank you very much, Kenny. Aquatic Marine, had a lot of fun hanging out with you and Terry doing that after hours episode behind the scenes at your store. Looking forward to the next one. I need to come see you because I realized earlier I am almost out of Prime, so I need to get up there soon. But thank you again, Kenny, our Aquatic Marine. And our good buddy Mike's Aquatics and things with the $10 super sticker with the cheerleader emoji. 1 second. There we go. Now I can see. Got all this stuff. Very much appreciated, Mike. I hope you are having an awesome day. It's always good talking to you. As always, I appreciate your support, my friend. All right.
This is one of Amber's Bettas she sent me.
Oh,
cool. Big City. I was going to ask her some questions about him because I'm not for sure what type of Betta he is, because I've had Bettas my whole life. She was talking about how she had that aquarium that was kind of a tank, a Noah's Ark tank. Well, I always tried to keep a Betta in every Noah's Ark tank because they added so much color.
Right.
As long as I didn't have fin nippers. And normally I tried to stay away from the fin nippers. So I've had Bettas my whole life. Just the boy. I've never owned a female. I've just always had some boys. But I actually, this is probably the fewest I've ever had. I only have two right now because I've got so many guppies. Guppies are the one fish that a Betta can keep up with, and I don't want them to mess up some of my big pretty boys.
Absolutely. I'm going to go through the chat here while we're waiting on Amber to get connected back. Let's see. Got Bottom Dweller Aquatics swinging through saying, hey, Chattanooga, Ed and Fisher and Fever. Hope you're doing well, Bottom Dweller. Appreciate you being here. Rolling and a scroll, and there was Fish Tank Barn Super Chat again. Thank you, Mike. Triple J Aquatics says, thanks for the stream, man. Thank you for being here, Triple J. Very much appreciate it. Always enjoy getting together with you all on Thursdays. Now, next Thursday is going to be a little different. I think we're going to be on the road during stream time, probably, maybe. I don't know.
Well, we'll probably be at our hotel by then.
Okay.
Maybe we'll just do like one of those 2-hour shows and not worry about switching over to mine. We'll just do a Fishing Fever for 2 hours with Sean Peck, or maybe an hour, and see what happens.
Absolutely.
Maybe we'll have a pizza too.
That'll be fun. But yeah, it'll be a little different. Oh, there's Amber. Oh, Ed's got it. It's weird. StreamYard has added this thing where the guests can now manipulate the screens and stuff.
Sweating now. I'm so sorry, guys.
Hey, you're fine.
Look, everything, it wouldn't work. I'm not moving stuff. At some point, we should do a stream where I'm already in front of tanks and I can show you all my crap.
Well,
we would love to have you back anytime to do another one. I will say on a plus side, though, your audio is now synced up, so that's not going to throw me off. I was working my best, but sorry I kept interrupting you.
No, it was me interrupting you. I just do that. You know me. You've met me.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to grab a couple more highlighted things from the chat real quick. Fishies and Flippies says, formerly Shayali. Finally got my channel name changed. I hope this will make it easier for everyone. I was going to use my name Cheryl, but so many already using that. Well, Fishies and Flippies, I like that very much. And as always, glad to see you.
Now, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, if you do have questions for Amber or any of us, but she's the Betta expert, feel free to put at Fish Room Fever. That'll highlight for me, and we'll be happy to ask her those. Put her on the spot, Sorry, go ahead, Ed.
This is Big City. Amber sent him to me, and he's just like super cute. He likes to sleep on the sponge filter in the back.
Oh, he's coloring in too. Look at him.
Yeah, I got to put my face. When he sees my face, he'll come over, but when it's just the camera, he kind of gets afraid. Come here, buddy.
Sorry about that. I had also closed the chat on YouTube.
It's all good.
But I'm sure you had questions that I've now wasted 10 minutes of your time with technical difficulties.
Hey, never a waste. And it worked out well. It gave me a chance to go through the super chats and catch up with some of the other things going on in chat and say some hellos. So don't feel bad at all. Okay. I was just going to kind of go through the basics. Maybe if somebody's watching and they've not got a Betta yet, kind of from, where would you recommend getting one from, a source, to what type of setup or home or aquarium would you put them in, and then general like feeding care stuff, your recommendations on it, because you've bred them and you've kept so many of them, and you are Big City Bettas after all. So
it's true. So where to start? All right, so the first place would be sourcing. A lot of people buy imports, which can be a really good route. Sometimes, due to the way farms work with importing, you can get disease. I have found sometimes they do have a shorter lifespan. Sometimes they struggle a little bit to adapt to the water in the U.S., so you might have, for a little while, some slime coat issues. But if you're working with a good company that's importing well, then you shouldn't have that issue. I do know John and Lisa are now importing, so that would be someone to look at for imports. Prism Bettas is a really good source for imports. Casey she's been an amazing breeder in the IBC for many, many years, and her fish are like some of the top quality. I tend to go to her when I'm trying to source new breeders, just because I know, it's going to be a really good fish. And not to self-promote, but I am going to be launching my website in the next couple days. I'm going to be doing a live.
Totally want to promote that.
Yeah.
I'm going to be doing a live stream to announce that, so stay tuned. I just have the trouble with bettas is as soon as you have them all on and you have video or photo of them, they marble and they change just a little bit. At least half of them do, and then you have to go back through all of them and kind of redo it. But I mean, I have been breeding for a really long time, and not to like self-promote, but in general, captive bred bettas, I find overall they are usually a lot healthier and more robust. Kind of like Ed was just showing, the big bodies. And I don't know if you can, some of the jars behind me are boys I'm growing out to breed back, which is always really fun, breeding fish that you've bred and raised yourself. But I think the main thing would be if you're going to be buying a fish off eBay or Aquabid, a betta, email the seller first and ask them for a current picture of that fish.
Okay.
Because I've had a lot of issues with them saying, oh no, it's marbling, it just marbled. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, no, I bought a crown tail and this is a really bad half moon. Like blatant lies. So yes, and I would also look into the background of your seller and see, do they breed, with the IBC? Are they an IBC breeder? Are they a hobby breeder? How long have they been breeding? And I think that most, if not all, betta breeders and sellers should be fully transparent with what their setup looks like. Like, this is mine behind me. These are my 10-gallon spawn tanks. You know what I mean? I don't think anyone with any real integrity behind what they're doing should have to hide how they're doing it. So that's another thing to look for. And then tank setup, I think, would be the next thing probably. And bettas thrive in planted tanks. They really do best in them. You'll see a lot more activity out of your fish. It keeps the water cleaner, and pretty much, I mean, I would argue most fish could be kept in a planted tank without a filter if it's done right. But bettas in general definitely can, especially if you're staying on top of the water changes and they're live plants. Because for those who don't know, bettas are what's called a labyrinth breather. They're in the Anabantoid family along with gouramis. They're actually a cousin of the gourami. And that means they have a developed lung organ located near where, like, you'd think an ear canal would be. And it allows them to breathe surface air, which is both very cool and also why you see bettas in terrible conditions, dirty water, small bowls, because they can survive in that. But for them to thrive, planted tank's the way to go. It does need to be heated. Betta's metabolism slows at 78 degrees, and then at 64 it stops altogether. So think of it like a reptile. They need their heat lamp in order to digest their food. Bettas are very much the same. If they don't have enough warmth and they can't draw that out of the water because they don't produce their own body heat and they're, very tropical fish, it'll just sit in their digestive tract and actually rot and cause constipation. Usually leads to dropsy, and then they die. So heat's definitely important. Mm-hmm.
What do you recommend as a temperature?
I like 80 degrees for just keeping. If you keep them a little bit lower, more towards the 78 degree range, they will have a slower metabolism. So you feed them less and they live a little bit longer. Another component to the tank is a lid. Bettas are extremely, extremely advanced jumpers. I've seen wilds precision jump out of a hole the size of airline tubing and go about 3 feet across the room. And this is something that domestics have taken from them, and they often will just jump. And sometimes it's not even, which is another misconception, that they jump when the water is fouled or unpleasant. No, sometimes they just jump because they're hungry, or maybe there's a female in the next area that they might land in of water, which is never the case. It's usually your floor. So lid's recommended. And in addition to that, to size, I would say the largest size you can get. Bettas, especially domestics, short fins in particular, are very active fish, and they will fully utilize the entire tank space. A big misconception is that males in the wild have a small territory and it's like a rice paddy. first of all, they're not even the same fish. They're related, but they're not the same. And secondly, the males in the wild, on average, with species, have a 3-foot to 4-foot territory in which they constantly guard and keep other males away from. And those boundaries might change, but they're also a fish that is not as aggressive as domestic bettas. Humans developed domestic bettas by selectively crossbreeding various species of wilds about 650 years ago in Asia. And the primary goal was to create a hyper-aggressive fish that they could fight for sport. Because wilds already being naturally territorial, they saw sparring in the wild and they were like, oh my gosh, and being humans, they kind of wanted to use it to their own entertainment. Absolutely. And fun little side note, from those fighter types, you often see a lot of those in Asia nowadays. They're very large-bodied placots with usually blue bodies and red fins. Those are the original domestics. Here and there in spawns, it would throw a really pretty fish or a different color. And it became kind of like a tradition to gift that to the lady of the house or your daughter, because this was a male-dominated sport. So with all men, it would be a gift to whatever special lady in your life.
Okay.
And those became
like living flowers.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, those really are like living flowers. And from there, it became a very, sought out thing. So people began breeding them for looks, which is why they're both very aggressive and very beautiful, because they were bred for both. So tank space for domestics is different because they were bred to not just be territorial, but aggressive. So, I mean, I've had them in a very, very large tank, and I've seen them swim the whole length of the tank and adventure and check out different things. So it's really the biggest size that you can do. 5-gallon kind of being the accepted minimum, but I really like a 10-gallon. It'll also give you a lot more stability and kind of wiggle room with your water changes. And what was the rest of the part to that? Feeding?
I guess feeding would be the next thing. Kind of what your preferred foods are, and also the feeding schedule, because a lot of people mention feed 6 days and give 1 rest day, and your thoughts on all that.
So I think any fish in a planted or established aquarium does well with a day off to let its system kind of clear out and reset and not get them too complacent and food just raining from the sky however many times a day you do that. And with bettas, feeding, I think the most important thing to look at is what you're feeding. Mm-hmm. So bettas by nature are carnivorous fish. They're specifically insectivores, meaning their gut bacterium and what they're built to digest is insects. That's what they eat in the wild. It's what they do. Feeding them something too high in vegetation, they won't be able to break down. So a low quality pellet or a pellet with like just a lot of animal protein in meal, they're not going to do very well with. Okay. I personally prefer, most people aren't going to do live because that would be like white worms or daphnia, and that's a lot of work. Frozen thawed is a really good option. Bloodworms are kind of the go-to choice. It's what I use when I'm trying to fatten them up. But you can't make that the staple of their diet. Bloodworms are deficient in some vitamins and minerals that they need. So a varied diet is the best option. And if you can implement one frozen thawed food, like bloodworms, brine shrimp, I have found, anecdotal, but I have found they don't really go for the mysis shrimp. I don't know why, they just don't seem to like them. Perhaps either of you have had a different experience with mysis shrimp and bettas?
I've not tried them myself.
Nope. I do frozen bloodworms with this little guy, and I also give him my high protein flake that I give my guppies.
Yeah.
And I've been praying that I'm doing all right. He seems happy.
He looks good.
Thanks.
He looks really good. I think it's cool to see his colors coming in.
Well, his fins are more of a blue, like a shimmering blue that the camera didn't pick up on. He's so pretty. But yeah.
I'm glad you like him.
And he's a snail bully. He doesn't allow any snails to go on the tank or grow up the glass. And I don't know if you noticed, but when he came up, he knocked the snail off of some of the plants that were right there too. It was kind of cool. I've been.
That's
And
one
that
of
was-
the things that I love about betas or bettas. See, I just did that.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And if it does, then I mean, you're really bored in your life if
Take
that
your
doesn't matter.
fish police badge somewhere else.
But no, that is one of the coolest things about them is fish to fish, the personalities are just totally different. Like, I have had betas where I put it, mind you, most betas do fine with certain community fish, and that's one quick thing to touch on the tank thing. Bettas do really well with live bears. They will probably eat some of the babies if they can catch them, but they do well with them. Rasbora, smaller species of tetra, but they don't do well with fast, nippy fish because, oddly enough, a lot of times bettas are very chill in the tank and they can be bullied, often to their own death. But I've had males where I put them in a guppy tank with 2 male guppies, and 5 minutes later there was a guppy head left and he was murdering the second one to eat it. And I was like, oh God. And then I've had ones where they could breed with a female, and then I could leave the female in the tank and they were fine, which is not common. Usually after spawning, the males are done with the females and they push them off the nest. So fish to fish, they have such different personalities. I think it's so cool.
Do.
Well, I've got, and I'm not for sure they're different names of the bettas, but I've got one in the other room that's got the giant fins, and he's so much slower. I have black tetras, and he loves to chase them, and it gives him some energy, but he'll never catch them. But it gives him something to do. And I've thought about this little guy, and I've thought about maybe putting some endlers in there, thinking they might be quick enough to stay away from, because he's so much, I think, quicker than the other one. But I'd like to have him have somebody to do some exercise with. Does that make sense?
It does. And that's one of the things I was talking about with short fin versus long fin. The energy level between the two is going to be very different. So if you have a shorter fin fish, a bigger tank is always going to be way better for it. Feeding. We were talking about feeding. Just really quick to sum that up. So if you just have a couple of bettas at home, the best option by far is to get a few kinds of frozen food, and this is labor intensive a little bit, but frozen food, different kinds of dried food, high quality. I like Extreme Aquatics. Sarah's very good. Anything that's very high protein. Bug Bites by Fluval is so good and so popular. I don't like Northfin. I will say a lot of people like it. I try to stay away from it. At least they're betta foods. Just me. I would soak the dried food in water, and you can find videos on it online, but the best way to feed a betta is multiple foods. And if you aren't feeding like I am, so you can't just thaw a sheet of bloodworms, you can thaw out a bunch of frozen foods, soak dried foods, mix them together, and add powdered gelatin and make a gel food that you can then just cut little pieces off from the freezer. It lasts a really long time. If you can't feed a whole cube of frozen food in one shot, it's a really good option because you can just cut off whatever you want and it contains that. So that's like the best in my opinion. But what's reasonable for most people is high quality dried food and some type of frozen thawed. And I also highly recommend the addition of a product called VitaChem. It's a multivitamin and nutritional supplement. You just put a few drops on any fish food and it really gives them a boost. I notice a huge difference in all of my fish.
Awesome.
Well, thank you. No, that's good information. And I'm glad that you like the Extreme too. I was sitting here going, I hope she likes the Extreme, because that's one of my staples with all of my fish, including my bettas. And I'm glad that they reformulated the pellet size on that.
They did?
Food.
That's good.
I'm gonna grab some stuff from the chat real quick.
I'm gonna look at the chat for the first time. I
bought the betta food from Extreme a while ago, and I think it was too big for my bettas, so I feed it to my mollies now.
Let's see. Hello, Xanadu. Good to see you. Saying hello, coming in the chat. Okay, don't freeze up on me.
Oh, my cat is
Gene
being
Campbell
naughty.
says, has Amber tried Betta only community tank? So I guess we touched on that.
I have one right behind me, actually. I'm not moving too much stuff at all.
That's all good.
I'm afraid to. Hang on, let me
You
look.
can just tell us about it.
Yeah.
See that back here? That tank there. At some point, I should do like a video short on it because it's pretty interesting. But I took the runt bettas I had from about 4 different spawns and just kind of threw them in that 29 that's planted out back there. And as I see male aggression, I pull them. But so far, they're doing really well. I do know it's going to reach a point where I just have to pull all the males, or it's going to be a free for all. I have seen people, especially on YouTube, a few people try or keep sibling groups together with multiple adult males and multiple adult females, and they say it's very successful and they pulled it off, but the fish don't look like it's successful. One thing to keep in mind with bettas is they are very big on communication through hormones and pheromones. I don't know if any of you guys have noticed the little like pitting they have on the side of their head near their eyes.
Okay.
That's actually glands that pick up on hormones and different pheromones in the water. It's how wild bettas, like a male, as I said, will have his territory, and he will be guarding his territory. And when the conditions are right, usually it's rainfall, because rainfall in Asia in particular means a temperature drop. It means fresh water is being added, and it also means live foods are not only attracted to the surface of the water, but they're going to be breeding and laying eggs. There's going to be larvae. So that usually kind of kickstarts males nesting and deciding, okay, conditions are right. And then they'll actually send out pheromones into the water, and females will randomly swim by, pick up on the pheromones, come by. And then this is actually kind of why betta breeding can be a little aggressive or violent, even with domestics. The pair will actually spar with one another and kind of flare and swim along each other. And the males will actually do this thing where they'll like slap and undulate their tail through the water to create waves to kind of show that they're big and strong. And the whole point of sparring is to kind of decide, okay, is this a strong mate that's going to produce offspring that can carry genetics on? Yeah. So they'll spar. And when we bred bettas for aggression, we took what is usually a very mild sparring to what can sometimes lead to tattered fins, scales missing. I have had fish die in the spawning process. Yeah. So that's definitely something to keep in mind with keeping them together. They release hormones, and if they're exposed to the hormones for too long, it can actually be detrimental to their health. Another misconception, females don't get egg bound. Female bettas do not get egg bound. They are designed by nature, when they have too many eggs in their system, to reabsorb them. If your female dies and she's super eggy, chances are there was a problem with the water and it was actually a bacterial death, and she's just eggy and looks bloated, or perhaps constipation. But science has proven that there's no way for a betta to die of being egg bound. It doesn't happen. But
it's good to know.
That was going to be my next question, was how do you know when a female's ready? And I was about to say, can you tell if she's eggy to go? But I guess not.
You can, because they will develop more eggs.
Oh, so they do swell.
Yes, and the more food. Well, if you think about it, a fish utilizes food as an energy source for either what it's doing, be it like physical activity, or inside its body, like producing eggs or milk, which is the male component to breeding. So with females, if you're feeding them really, really well, they're going to produce a lot more eggs. And if they're exposed to that male pheromone, they're going to produce even more, even if they see a male, because it gets them all excited and they're like, oh, this is a chance to breed. Females also, between the two ventral fins, which are the two kind of hanging down fins on their belly, they have what's called an ovipositor, or an egg spot. It kind of looks like a piece of salt on a pretzel, if that makes any sense. It's this little white speck. And angelfish have that as well, but with angelfish it's more obvious. It's a tube. And basically, they lower that and it becomes enlarged when they're ready to breed and deposit eggs. Pistogrammas have it as well. So that's one way to tell if a female's ready. Another way is to put the male in the spawn tank, and it's advised to do this anyways. You can put her in a clear container within the tank so she can see him. And if she's showing interest and she's flaring back and she's trying to swim to him in the nest, that's a way to tell if she's ready. So,
Well, that's awesome. How many females do you have, like, at a time? Like, do you keep just like a couple, or do you like have a dozen that you're always looking at, or?
I mean, to breed, or?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was going to say females total, I think I have like 120. Like I said, well, the website's almost ready. But breeding at the moment I can count from here, because the jars behind me are all fish that I've either raised myself or... No, actually, I don't have any that I haven't raised myself at this point. And that's kind of fun about breeding your own. I just realized is that I'm now working with all of my own genetics.
That's
nice.
So, yeah, I just realized that's kind of cool. But I have 11 females at the moment. But I also have 12 spawn tanks. So I have the ability to do a dozen different pairs at any given time.
That's awesome.
That is.
I've actually never had this many tanks, and there's only one that doesn't have fry in it, and that's because I wanted to do another spawn, so I took the fry and just kind of put him in another spawn tank with a bunch of fry of the same size. I'm like, it's fine. You guys are crown tails. You're marble half moon. I can tell.
Absolutely.
Now, with guppies, you get a lot of your fins and stuff from the female, but the color from the boys. How does that work with bettas? Is it a 50-50 mix always, or do the girls put off different dominant traits and boys do different dominants? Or how do you pair them? So
I know I'm smiling right now because this is like my favorite part about breeding them. The genetics are like a complete wild card. So the only thing that's a guarantee, and this isn't even a guarantee, it's only if you have good genetics that you're working with, is tail type.
Okay.
So bettas have, as everything else does, two types of traits. You have phenotype, which is what you see in someone. So like I have dark hair, I have pale skin. And then you have genotype. So like in my ancestry background, we have gingers, which I obviously don't have, but if I ever had children, I might have a little redhead. Who knows?
Big little R.
Yeah, fish are bettas in particular are the same way. So what you see in the parents might not be what you get in the offspring, but it's more so with bettas because the amount of inbreeding, line breeding, and crossbreeding we've done. So one pair of bettas might produce 50 offspring. And say you have a red male, hi Peanut, joined by a peanut cat. You might have a red female and a blue male and 50 fry. You might, out of those 50 fry, get 4 blue, 3 red, a couple that are a mix. And then you might get some koi, you might get marble, you might get white. You could literally get any other color thrown out in that spawn because you don't know the background of that fish, but it has a really diverse gene pool. So that's kind of the neat thing. And that's also why people do line breed. They've proven bettas can be inbred without Peanut. Oh, I'm so sorry. He's being a troublemaker. You can inbreed bettas for 6 generations without having any defects from it. And that's how people create lines, is they will take 2 fish with traits that they like that are very similar looking and breed those 2 together, hoping instead of by breeding 2 different colors and getting 4 and 5 of each, you might get 10 of that color that both parents have that you want. You then take those 10, pick out the best, breed them, and you might get 20 of what you want. And then you keep going. But at some point, you have to pick a fish from some other gene pool to breed that line back to And from there, you just erased half your work. So you might be to a point where you're getting fully one color of what you wanted from those original parents, but then you have to take those and breed it back to something that looks the same, and all of a sudden your spawns are half mixed and half that color, and it starts all over again. So, I mean, I know some people who've been working on lines for 18 years, and they still haven't got them to the point where every fish looks like the parents.
Right.
Now, are you buddies with them? Like, could you have your own line going for 18 years, and let's say John's just a made up name, but has a line that's been going for 18 years, and you got to break it up somehow. Do you guys trade, or do you want to keep them separate? Because like in the IFGA, you may want to make sure you always win, or are they real nice and cool about it?
Oh, that's a dangerous question. Now that you worded it that way, are betta breeders nice and cool people?
Oh, well, I didn't mean it like that, but willing to give each other secrets.
Anyone who knows some of the Facebook groups that I'm thinking of in the chat, they're probably laughing at me cringing. Sharing of information is not very popular because part of creating a beautiful betta is knowing how to raise that spawn. It takes me about 4 months tops to get them to a size and a color where I would feel comfortable selling them as adults. Someone who has a different feeding schedule, different water change schedule, different tank size, even different water, it might take them 9 months, 10 months. And if you do it improperly, the fish will grow improperly and you'll see it in the end result. So betta breeders are very good about sharing genetics and fish because they all kind of think that they've got the best method of doing things. So there's no way anyone else, even with their fish, could beat them, kind of thing.
So it's the method that's a secret, but the DNA is open.
Yeah, but I'm pretty open about I'm completely open about how I do things because I think more people should breed bettas. And frankly, with the amount of work involved, for those who are willing to put in the effort, I think they should be able to experience raising up healthy fry and then healthy fish because it's magical. It really is kind of magical. They change so much day to day. You get to watch their fins develop, their colors develop. You might have a spawn. I have one right now where all the fish are about the same size, and then I have one that is 3 times bigger than everyone else. I know he didn't jump from a tank. I know I didn't move him in my python hose doing water changes. He's just a chunky boy. So part of the magic of keeping bettas is seeing them breed and getting to raise up fry.
Absolutely. That's very well put. So we've only got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to grab a couple more things from the chat here. Excuse me. R&B Animals Rescue says, for Amber, my betta kills all the tank mates I put in there and was wondering if I should try putting him with a female or not.
Not to keep. If you're looking to breed and you have the setup and you have live foods, which if you want to talk for a minute, I can quickly cover what's involved with breeding, but there's a lot involved with breeding. So if you're not prepared to follow through with that, you should never put a male with a female. That's, in my opinion, that is the only time you should have a male with a female is if you're going to breed and you're going to have what you need in order to raise up the fry, which the most important thing, as I stated in the beginning of this, is live foods. I prefer microworms, Walter worms, banana worms, and then baby brine shrimp. But if you don't want half your fry to die, you need those microworms. And if you want them to keep growing and develop right, you need those baby brine shrimp. So there's quite a few things involved in putting a male and a female together responsibly, I think.
Well, and to that point, even, some place for the fish to go after you've successfully done all that.
Oh, yes. I'm looking at a whole lot of jars right now because I have aspirations in the next 6 months to upgrade to a barrack system with 1 gallons. But at the moment, I'm working with 32-ounce deli containers to get daily water changes. But those are not the Those are not the fish that I'm keeping. The fish I keep are behind me, and they're in the 2-gallon jars, which, again, 2 gallons, in my opinion, is not enough long term. But for my breeders, once I've bred them a couple of times, and mind you, these are young fish, so it's not taxing their bodies at all. Once I've bred them a few times, I will sell them and pass them on if someone wants to breed them, or ideally pass them on to a friend so they get like a nice little retirement in a tank and things like that. And I can practically hear Jess Shrimp Granny in the chat. Thanks!
Absolutely. I'm going to grab this on the way through the chat here. Xana Doodoo, thank you for the $1 super sticker with the big brown pile of poo. I appreciate it, brother. I hope you're doing well. I hope those fish are doing well for you. I'm sure you probably got your hands full with babies at this point. Let's see. Fishaholic says, stupid question for Fish Nerd. Is it okay to leave a dead fish for snails as it was covered with snails, or pull the dead fish out so the ammonia level won't go up? Sorry, newbie. Thanks.
Can I answer? Well, no, we should let Amber answer.
We should, because I feel like we've answered this one, because I know it's the commonly asked question. So yeah, Amber, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
It depends on how long it takes the snails to eat the fish. I personally, if there's enough snake, like if I can't see that fish and it's like a whole one of those tanks you have where you're like, where did you all come from? I just leave it, and the next time I go through to feed, I check, and if it's still there, I'll pull it out. But I mean, if it's that many snails, it's never still there. At that point, it's just that little divot in the sand, and it's gone. But I also tend to kind of run more nature tanks, so I kind of feel like it's a very natural thing, and it helps your snails breed. Like,
and your shrimp.
Yeah, and I've definitely done the same. Especially a lot of my tanks have a lot of ram's horns, so they take care of that pretty quickly. Go ahead.
I do pull right away, though, in my guppy tanks, because if they do have a disease or something, I don't want it to get out of control. So my guppy tanks, I'm really quick at pulling everything and a lot of times females die because they're giving birth and stuff, so I yank them.
Or because they're being harassed by males. But the other one thing to touch on with guppies is and this is going to sound horrifying to some people, but in my opinion, it's almost impossible to never have some type of internal parasites in your guppies at some point, because they eat their own poop like there's no tomorrow. They'll turn around and just be like, nom, 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 as it's coming out. I'm like, what are you doing? Oh, that's nasty. So, I mean, with the best success I've had with guppies and endlers is once a week treating dried food with Prezi-Pro and just dropping it in. And then I don't have to worry about ever looking in the tank and seeing that one skinny one that's kind of doing that little bobbly swim. And you're going, oh, no, buddy, what's wrong with you? Yeah. So, I mean, you should pull up with a guppy tank just because they'll eat it. I mean, they're like, oh, here's Bob. Oh, look, Bob's food. Like,
absolutely.
These are not smart.
Delilah's Critter says, question for Amber. When breeding, how old is a baby before you know it's out of the woods as far as genetic troubles?
That's a good question. Well, the first thing, because there's so many different things that can go wrong, but the main things you'll notice are missing ventral fins. By 6 weeks old, they should have all of their fins developed. If they don't have the 2 hanging down fins, that means at some point, I hate calling it hanging down fins, but so many people don't.
Yeah.
Anyways, those fins on their belly, the ribbon fins, I don't know. Anyways, those are actually always formed around 4 to 5 weeks. But if there's too much bacteria in the tank, too much uneaten food, or you're not rinsing your brine shrimp properly, and it's not due to the salt, it's bacteria, they will kind of melt off and never grow back. That's the first thing to look for. The second thing to look for, which is a true genetic defect, is bent spines. I mean, the longer you breed, the more you can see it, but starting at a week old, you can notice ones with this, it'll look like this ever so slight white bump running along their spine and their back. And at first you'll kind of be like, I can't, is that what she was talking about? But once you see it, you'll know exactly what it is, and it will slowly turn into a fish that struggles really, really hard to swim, to eat, to just be a fish. Swim bladder disease is very predominant in breeding bettas, and it's unfortunate because once you damage their swim bladder when it's developing, it does not go back. I've seen it go back very few times, and that's only because you caught it early on. It can be damaged by feeding them baby brine shrimp with the shells still like in the mix, because sometimes they will consume them and it ends up pushing on that organ and causing problems. And you'll have this fish that the way it manifests is almost this little draggy along the bottom thing. And then when they go up for air, it's like this shooting, dropping, and their little butt will just droop the whole time they're trying to swim. I do call for that because, I mean, it's something that doesn't get better. And if you breed it, you will end up with more fish like that. And for a fish that needs to surface to breathe, struggling just to swim in the water column is a massive detriment. And then the last one to look for is what's called spoonhead. And it's when your fish are about 8 weeks old, they start developing this weird slope to their face that just looks very abnormal. Kind of like some Tanganyikan species, like shell dwellers. It's just this very weird shape where their jaw looks big and their head looks small. That's another genetic defect to look for and call for, because if that fish leaves your care to someone who doesn't know better or doesn't care, they might breed it and start producing really defective fish.
Gotcha.
Which is why culling is important when you have genetic defects, which is another thing to consider when you're thinking about breeding.
Absolutely. So overall, about what age would you kind of be past all of those points where you know that you're not going to find new things popping up?
3 months, but the reason I listed them separately is because each one manifests differently, and if you catch it early, it's not culling early is not nearly as painful as when they start to really look like adult fish. Like it gets more painful the less they look like a tadpole.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, here's a very touchy subject. When you call, what do you do with your calls? Or if you don't want to say, you don't have to either.
It depends on the size. It depends on the size. So if it's some fry that have genetic defects and are struggling to swim, they will stay smaller than their siblings and they will be eaten. There's just, I mean,
so the siblings will eat each other.
Oh yes, and you often get different sizes within a spawn. So it's Darwinism. It's survival of the fittest. Isn't that Darwinism?
Yep. Well, it sounds like it could be.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I'm not sure. I'm kind of excited to just talk bettas. This is the first time I've gotten to like nerd out on fish since COVID.
Right.
Oh my god.
I'm like, oh my god.
You should come up here more often.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, just let me ramble at the people as I keep turning my camera on.
Hey, we all love it. So Ed, I do want to say we're a minute into your show time. I don't know what your plan was because Ed's the guest planner. So,
well, would you mind if we just shifted right over to mine and we'll just take like a 2-minute break and then move over to my channel?
Sure, that works.
Okay.
Let me grab a couple last things before we cut it off, though.
Yeah, and all your thank yous.
Absolutely. Let's see, just highlighted stuff here. Paul said here, I was just saying, if beta groups are anything like discus groups on Facebook, you better put your big boy pants on. Yeah, absolutely, Paul. And hello, Jay Oliver's Guppies at Aquatics, saying hello to everyone. And then Jess Shrimp Granny, thank you for the $5 super chat, says, Amber has been holding my fish hostage for months, exposing him to debauchery in adult situations. Oh, goodness. Oh,
this is true, but he has made some beautiful babies.
She will release your poor adult situation exposed beta to you soon, Jess. And thank you very much for the $5 super chat. Just thank you for being here. Always appreciated. If you do have more questions, because that's everything highlighted from the chat here. If you're live with us, do me a favor, follow on over to Chattanooga Ed's channel. If you're not live, go catch that replay on his channel. Any final thoughts on this one before we cut over, just in case maybe somebody doesn't catch the next one? Anything that we may have missed that you definitely want in here with this information?
Yeah, I think the main thing to keep in mind with keeping and breeding bettas, especially keeping them, is there is no one right way. Everybody does it differently, and as long as you're giving your fish what it needs to succeed, clean water, good food, right amount of space, heat, you're not doing it wrong. And you shouldn't let people tell you that you are just because they do it differently. And I think that's something that, especially in the betta niche, but even in the hobby in general, more people need to realize is that there is no right way to do things. There's one right way. There's multiple, and there's so much information out there. Just research, and then figure out what works for you. So that would be my little last bit on this.
Great information.
Yeah.
As always, Ed, thank you for being here, my buddy, pal, and co-host. A huge thank you, Amber, Big City Bettas, for being our guest today. Link is in the description for her channel, and once she has the website up, I will add that link in the description as well, so you can check out the awesome bettas that she's selling. As always, a huge thank you to the members and moderators, everybody that contributed with these super chats and these super stickers, of course, the lurkers, the listeners, and that awesome replay crew. I love you guys. Do me a favor, leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought. I enjoy interacting with those and having some conversations after the fact with you all. Ed's link is in the chat right now. So if you're live with us, we're going to take a couple minutes to switch over. Go grab you something to drink, a little snack, use the restroom, and we're going to go have some more fun on the Chattanooga Ed channel.
And next week, we'll be in Florida.
Yes.
So we're probably just going to do a 2-hour special, or we'll probably not do my show at all. We'll just have a Fish Room Fever fun show like we did with Kenny in Florida last year when we went collecting with Father Fish. But this time we'll be with Sean Peck at Aquaholics. So.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep your fish healthy, keep yourselves healthy. Don't be afraid to catch yourself a little Fish Room Fever.